Okay, we're calling the Park and Rec Advisory Committee meeting for December 2010 to order. It is about 17 minutes after 7 on the 2nd of December. And first item of business is the approval of minutes, and I know we all got those electronically. Does anybody have any comments or changes to the minutes that need to be made before we put them in the record? Okay.
Not me.
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I will make that motion to approve the minutes from 10:28.
Second.
Okay. All right. Let's have a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Opposed? All right. The minutes are approved from the October 28th meeting. And moving on to citizen comments on issues and items not on the agenda. And I don't see any other citizens besides those we expect to be here. So we'll move on to general business, and the first order of general business is the Oregon City High School construction class presentation. And we've seen this austere group before, some different faces, but they're going to talk to us about what they're going to do at Wesley Lynn Park. So thank you very, very much for coming and speaking to us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Miguel from Oregon City High School Construction, and as you guys are aware, last year we constructed the covered area, and there's a simple timeline in the packet if you guys would want to see that. And just this year we want to enhance the park even more by constructing a bathroom, storage, and concession stands. We have talked to Alan Masford, who drew up some plans for us that are in the back of the packet, and we've also been talking to a local engineer. His name is Dwayne Mason, and our financial support comes from the Metro Enhancement Grant, and $1,000 from the baseball program. We want to complement the covered area by keeping the same trusses, the front trusses, and the tile. We also want to keep the roof the same, and we're just wondering if you guys had any questions, and if you guys do, please direct it to Britt.
Okay, great.
I want to just add a comment, and I think you all know this, but the facility that they're wanting to build is included in our adopted master plan for the park. So this isn't like an add-on that we're, this was part of our planned park, just like the large structure they did for us last year. That was an amenity that they planned. So by doing this, it gets something that we wanted in the park anyway, and at a tremendous cost savings to the city, and plus all the advantages of working with this great group. I know you're all very familiar with our success in working with the OC Construction Group, which has just been fantastic. But anyway, just wanted to make that comment that it is this restroom concession building is part of the adopted master plan, and the location that we're putting it is where it's at on the master plan.
And it's considered part of Phase 2.
I think I would say that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, because it was not done in the first phase of the park. For funding reasons, it wasn't included, and so it would be part of what we were thinking about doing.
I guess that's the way I've looked at it too.
Yeah, it was one of the items that was in that latter phase of development. So we're getting a jump start on that.
And what would the time frame be on this part?
We're shooting to get it done by the end of the year.
By the end of our school year, just like
By the end of our
Yeah, school year.
Okay,
Okay.
right.
it may be a push because we would have to go through obviously a lot of groups and dealing with the architects and city planners and so forth. We'll push it as far as we possibly can. Get it done by summer.
What times of the day are you guys going to be out there working on it? Is it like at the end of the day or normal class time?
The period would be, generally 2 to 3.
From 2 to 3?
Depends. As things get going, we're out there spring break, Christmas break, whatever. But right now, we're still kind of waiting for when we get approval.
And maybe our construction weather will cooperate a little better than it did this end of this last season to get that picnic shelter built, right?
Yes, please, I would. If you can have that happen, I would. That was not a pleasant year last year. But we got it done, so I was very proud of it. I'll tell you that. But we've done this model just so you have a little idea. It's supposed to look just like, or a lot like the covered area, so it all looks like a cohesive.
Right.
One cohesive, planned out project. That's what we're shooting for.
I want to compliment them on the model. 'Cause last time, Brett, when you guys get, it was good, but this is fantastic. This is like incredible.
Well, they did a really nice job, and I'm actually proud of it. Just building the model was really
Yeah.
interesting. So all we had to work off at that point was just a footprint. So we designed the trusses to make sure they looked like last year's project.
Mm-hmm.
Same roof pitch, same middle row.
Awesome.
I suppose we could, or maybe not, examine these close enough and see what the square footage of the snack bar and the restrooms are. Is that?
And it should be, the plans, although you're going to be straining your eyes.
Yes.
In the back of that package.
Yeah, and we can also get up. I know we've got mics here, but we can also get up and take a look
I have
at
a
it.
little bit larger set here. And
Are there any specific challenges that you guys are looking at with this that concern you, or that people have expressed concerns with?
the first situation we came, or first question that we were kind of had to ponder was which way to put the bathrooms, the back or the front. And so we actually, we talked to all of the mothers, anybody that was at that play structure out in the park. we-
Soliciting a bunch of input?
Yeah. And it seemed the general, if I remember doing that, and most of the parents wanted it towards the play structures. They didn't want to send their kids around the back
Yeah.
of the structure. So this, in essence, the play structure is right here.
Okay, good.
Covered area, so
Yeah.
you'd be coming down the
Private
pergola.
area would be right there.
Mm-hmm.
Covered area is right where Miguel is. And then, so it would all just kind of tie together.
And the little berm would be behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Berm would be back here. The baseball field, baseball.
Yeah.
On each side.
Is there any outside like park bench or picnic bench seating or anything like
Well,
to
that-
take your snack
these-
bar treat out
These
there and
areas-
sit?
These areas, we were thinking of putting a pergola by the snack bar, some sort of a little, just a place to kind of tie in with the pergola. Went up there, just a place to maybe put a couple picnic benches, but that's up for interpretation. So we can, I have it designed to have a pergola over here, but that's up to you. I mean, if that's okay with you.
What do you guys think? I mean, we can toss that around a little bit. I mean, it's just my opinion that I think it'd be a great area to have some seating for enjoying your snack before or after the game, or for a family that is enjoying the park.
I was also going to maybe just, because there are 3 benches right over here. That's-
Correct.
This isn't exactly because I don't have them here, but we were thinking of putting maybe some benches across
To face. Yeah.
kind of mirroring it, and then maybe having a tree kind of mirroring it, depending on how it all comes out.
Yeah.
But I'll talk to Larry because see where he wants everything, see where you want everything. But that's kind of what we had in mind. That's why we put these trees here. And then maybe a couple of benches across the front. And then maybe a little
Kind of
eating
missed
area over here.
questions.
That's what we. That's
Talking to them. Are you guys looking at seating areas, more places to sit
Picnic
down?
benches.
Oh.
Yeah. So Scott, how would we introduce something like that?
36.
You know, a good idea or a bad idea, whatever.
Or a
Just like you're
recommendation?
doing. What's that?
Would we just recommend?
Yeah, just like you're doing right now.
Yeah.
You could kind of just
Yeah.
make a formal recommendation or
Yeah.
something like that. But I think they're probably hearing what you're saying. But I
Right.
might want to
This
just.
one? Oh, yeah, it's 8 foot wall.
You guys want to get up and just examine the structure out there? I think it's a good idea.
That's what I was going to.
Then this will be all wood, all. Who
is that?
I don't know. Oh, so we're mapping and then we'll come back and ask questions?
Yeah. There will be a wall up here to support those beams. These will be just same beams you see at the front. Let's see, 38.
So did you say so? The existing structures over here?
Yeah, like the covered area.
It's 36.
Here's the actual plans of the park.
Oh, okay.
And this is the concept plan. So what I was gonna say is the shelter is actually shifted to probably here, and then the play equipment system are here. But the,
1,000 feet. This is.
but we're not gonna put it in our tax area. There's going to be that.
Concessions.
This shows actually.
And we'll either just do it as a future, and just have it be plumbed out for
So our
that.
pergola could go back in behind.
I don't know, my main thing is to get the bathrooms up.
Still a continuation.
If I can do that.
So,
that'd be a
phase
start.
two,
That far.
phase three, phase four, depending on how many phases you want. There's outdoor lighting, there's no pathways.
This is one of my ex-students and all the.
Oh, yeah.
The other plans too? Yeah. And a story. We expanded the bathroom, so there's 3 stalls, so that seemed to be enough for any large event. Originally we sold. Well, we started with this two, and then they said, maybe that's the mechanical. Probably the water heater, the electrical panel will be in we could actually go out and start. We've been locating the city. We've actually.
28 by.
We have this area screened right now. So now I'm waiting, as soon as I get, we've got 4 bids. We have electrical bids, all of that's ready to go, so we can push it pretty. The next thing that we're going to get, the engineer. See, I'm trying to get this, so if you're going to get a special this one, make it. You're going to highlight. Heat the engineer. Probably I for pending approval. Theoretically, I can have all the forms ready.
Miguel, you mentioned a timeline in here, and I wasn't able to locate it.
Yes.
That was the picture, basically, of
Okay.
started the original thought.
Oh, that's what you were referring to. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, I see.
Okay, any comments? We were off mic there for a while, but any of the committee members have comments on what you've seen or talked about?
Well, I guess it doesn't directly have to do with the group. I think what you've got here is fantastic, but maybe this is sort of directed at Larry and maybe at Scott. Who's going to be in control of the concession stand? Because there's going to be some pretty expensive equipment in there, it looks like. And are we looking at security issues down the road we haven't thought about, or will it be under the control of a youth sports group, or how's that going to work?
Probably end up, I would guess, doing something similar to what we've done at Chapin Park. I don't know if you recall that last year we opened the volunteer-built snack shack at Chapin Park, and that's we own the building, so we have the ultimate control of that. It's our facility, but we have an agreement with the youth softball baseball group that they have first dibs on operating that since they built it and it's their fundraiser. But then we can also use it. We have our own keys and we have our own access. But we'll probably end up doing. I mean, that's really what it's sort of the youth sports groups that end up wanting to use those as a fundraiser and that type of thing. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about this either since you're building it, but that would be something that we would likely end up doing, is looking at working with the youth sports groups on, as they have tournaments and games and whatnot, they kind of tend to have volunteers do that, and then they can turn that money back towards the organization, which ultimately goes back into the parks anyway and all that good stuff. So.
But that's worked well.
It's worked very well. Yeah. And it could be open for people to, come in and, if there's a specific group that wanted to do that as a fundraiser or something, we'd be open to looking at letting different groups rotate through and that kind of thing.
That's a interesting question, Mike. What would you have in there for equipment to
Well,
serve? I mean, what?
I saw what looked like a stove, refrigerator.
So refrigeration, I would think, would be important, and then I would imagine a popcorn machine, something like that.
Typically would end up going in there. I don't know.
Something to cook hot dogs and hamburgers.
When we construct something like this, what we do is I'm taking input from the sports groups as far as outlets, size of outlets, sinks, the bare necessities on the walls, as far as the popcorn machine, hot dog machine, fridge, freezers, anything like that. They actually supply all the equipment and supply the building itself. So the sports groups are the ones that supply all.
They furnish it, basically.
Okay.
The other utility furnishings in the concession stands.
Yeah, I think it's pretty typical too to bring a barbecue, for something, if you're having an event too.
And right now, we just have, from the youth, Oregon City Youth Sports, they've dedicated $1,000. And I haven't been able to get a hold of the Oregon City Soccer Youth Sports. But the last time I talked to them, they sounded like they were interested in donating money too.
Okay, well, the one thing I'd mentioned earlier, call it a recommendation and input or just my opinion, I think that it would be nice if it was within the scope and there was money available, funding available for picnic benches, maybe under the structure there or somewhere else. That would be great.
Yeah,
I could see people enjoying their snack, like I said before, or whatever, and even families coming over they've got they have the covered area, but they could also enjoy the picnic benches by the snack bar.
It does a service to the building and the aesthetics and beauty of the building. If you're going to put stuff around it so that you come to it to kind of enjoy the concession and not just kind of
Areas
run
of
to it 'cause
interest.
you got to. Yeah,
Areas of interest surrounding it.
right.
And this could either be, we just designed this same pergola that goes up. Sorry, the pergola, it's the same design, or you could just have a real simple pitched wood structure that's waterproof also if you wanted, just kind of off to the side. Some benches under, a mini covered area, I suppose. My main interest right now is obviously the
Right.
the bathroom, not that.
Okay.
I don't think those picnic tables would necessarily have to be covered. I think it's just nice to have them on that concession stand side to.
That's something too that we can, if that goes beyond what these guys, this is a lot that they're doing
Right.
as a volunteer group and getting things, donated or rounded up or fundraised for. If it goes beyond what they're able to do, that's something that Larry and I can discuss and we can look at maybe adding on to the project as they're finishing up or after they're done or something like that, is putting in some benches and picnic tables around the area. So, yeah, we'll definitely be aware of that.
And I worked with the group last year, after they got done with the picnic shelter, they built a picnic shelter, well, I brought all of the furnishing books to the group, and they helped me pick out the colors, what kind of tables, what kind of benches. And so the Parks Department purchased all of that for the shelter. And I would say that, the benches around it, seating benches and picnic tables, I would add on to the rest of it.
Okay.
What a great addition
Yeah.
to that park. That's really nice.
It is going to be great. And I wish you guys well. Thank you for, really, this is a service to the community, obviously. I think you guys already know that. So thank you for serving the community, Oregon City.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Good job.
It's our place.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, and pass that on to the other members in the group if you would.
One other thing to mention, if you guys are interested in doing so, these meetings are webcast. I don't know if you guys knew you were on the camera the whole time up here. At least the backs of your heads were.
Miguel, you're a star now.
Yeah.
You can go on to the city's website, and then you go under the meetings tab and just look for the Parks and Recreation Committee and go to this date, and there will be a link that will say view meeting or something like that. And it's permanently stored on there, so you can go back and watch it, or if any of the class members that couldn't come that wanted to go back and watch it or whatever, you can enjoy yourselves on the webcast. Just to let you know. Thank you guys. Good job.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey, good job. Thanks.
Want these?
No, I was coming to shake your hand.
Oh, you were?
Thank you.
Great presentation. Great job.
What's your name?
Hannah Phillips.
Hannah Phillips. All right. Nice to meet you, Hannah. Hey, Miguel.
Nice
How are
working,
you?
guys. Thank you very much.
Thank
good,
you so
man.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rick.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Rick,
you guys come.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to.
If you want them, if you
But if
need
you need 'em,
them,
I want
I'm
to
going to do a whole new badge because we're presenting for Metro next Thursday. So.
yeah, here.
Perfect.
Have it.
I can do it. If you-
I don't need it, so I mean, you're going to have a need for it.
Oh, yes. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Great job. Thank you. Great group of students. Congratulations. I say a great group of students. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Marty, I love this, especially with the concession.
Any returning students from the last project? Miguel is one.
Lives up in that area and
Yeah.
I tried to make sure some of the new
part of the
kids,
youth sports.
juniors are there too, so they
Yeah.
This is specifically just juniors and seniors, right? Okay.
Actually, I do have one sophomore. This is rather exceptional.
Cool.
Great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's juniors and seniors.
That would have been fun as a student to do that.
You bet.
Thank you so much. Again.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I would have had to been in civil engineering to do that, and I wasn't in civil engineering. So. Okay, thanks again. There, and we're going to move on to the second order there of general business, and that is the proposed Kanema area property acquisition. And I know we're in a period of, was it due diligence, I think?
Right.
So, which gives this body time to reflect on the decisions that have been made to date, and also I think we have all of the information that we need to discuss and ask any questions or ask for clarifications. So I think that's what we're being afforded. I know that's what we're being afforded.
Right.
But Scott, could you just kind of elaborate on that?
You bet. You pretty well summarized that, Brian. On November 17th, the City Commission approved a real estate agreement which has a contingency period through December 31st. So we're in that due diligence period on this property. The one thing that kind of happened was, and I think I explained this in my emails that I sent to you, the timing ended up being a little weird because it sort of had to do with the timing of when your meetings were and when we were in executive sessions with the commission, and how the timing kind of did. Normally we would come to PRAC and have an executive session to discuss a property negotiation before it went to the commission for an approval. But there was an issue about this is a very motivated seller, and this is all public now, and it's out in
Right.
public, so we can discuss all this. A very motivated seller, which is reflected, I think, in the price of the negotiated price. Part of that motivation is based on closing by the end of this year for some tax reasons, and so I think there's some pretty strong consideration in the pricing because of that. So because of that timing, we had to move things relatively quickly just to get the ball rolling, to get into this due diligence and the contingency period. So I apologize if it seemed like you were kind of left out of the loop. That was no intention, and nor I don't think was it by the commission. But at the commission meeting on November 17th, when we brought this forward for approving the agreement that sort of started the timeline, I asked the commission, my recommendation was that they refer this back to you for an opinion before they before the city closes on the property, and then I would report back to the commission at one of their upcoming, they've got 2 more meetings in December, a study session next week and a regular commission meeting on the 15th before this would close. So you've got time to weigh in on this issue. So what I've included in all the information I gave you, and it's all on your screen here too, and you can, I don't know if you recall how to hit those. You can hit the document and then hit the document button and open up those items if you want to review those. I included the City Commission report that we did on the 17th, and that gives you a full description of everything. And in a nutshell, it's about 7.2 acres. It's the purchase agreement is for $120,000. And I put 3 different maps just to give some different views of where that's at. A couple things that I think are important to know about this, and probably some of the questions that were going back and forth on some of the emails I think surrounded this issue, which is the fact that basically what we're buying here is some open space to preserve. It's targeted in an area that was our second highest priority when we did that. Some of you are new and weren't here when we were doing the Metro bond measure thing, so this may be a little bit of a refresher. And so I apologize if this is redundant for some of you that already know this, but we are the recipients of some local share dollars from the Metro bond measure that passed in 2006. The purpose of that is for acquisition of parks and open spaces. There's a real strong emphasis in that bond measure of preserving open space, protecting environment, and actually protecting water quality is a big part of this as well. That's not really a key piece of this, but I think just the preservation of the open space. If you look on the maps there, especially that which one it is, I think the widest view one, the first view, number 1, those, so the highlighted property that's kind of in the center there with the hash marks, those 3 big parcels to the left of that, which would be basically to the southwest, those are all the Metro-owned Kenema Bluffs properties. And so you can see that there's a natural connection to that, and it just sort of continues that. And so, again, this is in a targeted, the Kenema area was identified early in this process by both by PRAC and by the City Commission. After the Glen Oak area property that we purchased, this was the second highest priority order area to look at some acquisition. So this is kind of how this all came to be, and we had a willing seller, and it just kind of all evolved that way. So we do have the funds in place from this Metro money. These would not be coming out of the city's own parks funds at all. These would be coming through the city, but from that Metro money. So the funds are available through that program. This is exactly what those funds are for, and this all fits in with the goals of that. So that's kind of a bit of a little bit more of a descriptive narrative about how we got here. I think the reason I wanted to the bigger thing here is I wanted to answer any questions that you had, because I think there were some questions that were needing to be answered. So I'd rather kind of just stop there and let you ask me what else needs to happen, or what other questions I can answer for you. And then again, remind you that the commission would like a response from you on this before we close on the property. So that's part of your request tonight.
Scott, I have a question. Taking you to the nice photographic view and blowing it up to 100%. I'm trying to find out for sure where the Kenema Park is that we spent last month becoming familiar with. Is it here near Blanchard and the 808 property?
I'm not sure.
Well, let me give me a second here.
Just to get a sense of
The
relationships.
easier way to see that is if you go back to view 1, your first map, and if you kind of blow that up a little bit, you look at the property that we're looking at here. Everybody there? We're all kind of working through this technology together here. So the hash, the one that's hashed, that's the property that we're talking about. If you go on your screen, straight up, you'll see the little kind of flag lot looking green space on there. That's Kanema Park. That's the little neighborhood park, and that's the area that we're talking about developing.
Is this South End Road just to the south of this property? Yeah.
Yeah, it's right on South End.
Yeah.
It takes the bend on the property there.
This is
So, Scott, staying on that view one, the property, the lot upriver, kind of on the upriver side here. You said this is directly adjacent. This is Metro property.
Yeah.
What's the status of those two?
Those are just privately owned.
Privately
Those are
owned.
all
So
parks.
this is the original Kanema Bluffs property, and these two parcels have been also acquired in recent years by Metro as part of their regional bond measures. So this is all Metro open space right here.
This is
Okay,
Metro, the yellow.
and this property would directly abut.
The white
Yep.
being
Okay,
private.
Yeah, just continue that. Yeah, so it's a good connection.
Or unincorporated?
Scott, did you just say these pieces were acquired by Metro?
No,
No,
these
those are
big
private.
to the left.
To the left.
All of these right here.
Big
Okay.
yellow to the left there.
These are all Metro owned open
Where's the
spaces.
cemetery at?
And those are private.
Up
You know
above,
that?
no, the
These two are
cemetery is
private,
back
and this
up,
is Metro.
up above there.
Even up above that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Glenn, did I answer your question?
I think so.
And then one of the questions that came up, Scott, is the type of property this is, and obviously the answer was that this type of property fits squarely within the bounds of what we're talking about.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be for.
It's not. I mean, obviously,
not looking
it's
at
not
an
a park,
active-
and it's not a.
It's
Right.
not going to be an active open space. It potentially would definitely have the potential to put some trail connections through there. It's quite a bit of is on some steeper slope, but there's also some lower part of that property and so you've got that
It looks
potential to
steep.
do those types of things.
Yeah.
It looks steep. It looks like it swells up right there, like it's a hill.
It does.
So the biggest value of that is connectivity and more open spaces that would be undisturbed. Is it?
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly.
I know you can't answer this, but it seems like the likelihood of somebody trying to develop that property, if it wasn't acquired, is not very high. Just looking at it, and I wonder if you didn't, spend that money, what would happen to that property?
Well, you've got a valid point. I mean, there's it's not highly developable. There's a little bit of the bottom portion that is developable, and so you could lose that part of it to development. But it's just the city wouldn't be in control of what happens there, and we would be if we owned it, and that's really kind of what it boils down to. So.
What is the value of that? It's stated in here that it's believed to be well below market value.
We did an analysis. We didn't because of the. So we have a real estate agent that we work with whenever we do put together property, and the agent that we have working for us, the company is pretty adept in, especially in like bigger parcels and commercial real estate stuff, and they gave us a breakdown based on some comparables. This one was tough to do a comparable. We chose not to do.
I bet it would be.
We chose not to do an appraisal on this one. We didn't want to spend to do an appraisal on a parcel this size costs about $3,000 or $4,000, and we made the choice not to do that simply because we believed, based on the information that we had, that we were well below what would have probably been an appraised value. Our agent kind of ballparked that the value of this is probably between $150,000 and $200,000. The seller is particularly motivated for several reasons, and probably the biggest reason that they're willing to part with this at what would be considered an undervalued price is because, and I can't speak for the seller, but there were some issues with a partnership on owning this property, and one of the partners of ownership kind of left the other guy high and dry, and got stuck with having to untangle a bunch of legal issues to make to get this into his name, and he really had no. He had no purpose for it into the future. They looked at potentially developing it, kind of like what you were saying, and they decided in the market and the amount of the property that they could develop it in the current market, he just wasn't going to be able to do much at this time. So, I mean, there were a number of reasons why he just felt like, and also he was very motivated because he wanted to see it become a preserved open space. And you know, there were some, I think some reduced value or reducing of price in the negotiation process based on a bunch of these types of motivations. So, I don't know if that answers your question very clearly, or.
Scott, can I ask a question about the trees on the property? Are they firs?
I think quite a few of them. I think. What's that?
I mean, do they use their leaves? Or?
Deciduous.
I think you've got both. I think you've got both.
Are some of them quite tall?
Yeah, Larry, are you intimately familiar with that? I think we've got some.
Real, but I mean, when you go by on South End, you've got some pretty good size. It's maple.
Got-
may have a few old.
You've got some very mature trees there.
So it really might be a nice raptor habitat.
Very much could be.
The
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The connectivity, I think, is one of the major things. There's nothing really precluding a property owner from harvesting trees. And at one point, when they reach the maturity, they may have quite a bit of value to a property owner that would own them from that sense. But also, I think there is a long-term vision of making a connection. You've got the waterfront along the Willamette, gain access to the elevator. You've got the promenade, and making a trail connection that could actually take you all the way, I believe, to the metro spaces. And so, ultimately, in terms of a park system, in terms of a trail system, you would have been, in terms of what we've already done, along the Cove, and you will eventually get a piece there along Main Street into Clackamas Park. We could have a major trail system that actually connects several parks with each other, and I think that's
Down
that's
McLaughlin,
yeah,
into downtown Oregon City, up
Right.
the elevator, down the promenade,
Yeah.
keep going.
See the string.
essentially from the river side of the city all the way to our
Right.
boundary on the river of the Willamette. So I think it's an investment worth making.
Do you have the opportunity to connect it on the other end of this piece of property? I mean,
Well,
it
I
looks
think,
like it terminates there.
It's kind of we're kind of in a position of not really being able to talk about it too much because that would be negotiating with property owners and so forth. And generally, when that comes to that point, we're really having it's something that we can even discuss in executive session. But I think a long-term vision would include that. Yes. And that's a sizable chunk of the property connecting the old Kanema Park, and I presume that's on your map. Old Kanema Park with the metro
Yeah.
open spaces. So,
Well,
in terms of a
and-
grand, longer view, I think there's some real potential.
Patrick?
Has anyone looked at what kind of costs it would be for upkeep? What would it take? What would the parks be then dedicated to help out with the upkeep of this park?
Yeah, pretty minimal on this one because it's just a natural open space, and it's not going to be landscaped or manicured. I mean, there's always a minimal level of responsibility, at least to
Like invasive ivies that grow up the trees and
or things like weeds and weed abatement if it goes to that level. But I don't really, based on what's on this property, I don't really foresee that being an issue.
So for a larger piece of timber that we wouldn't need to go in and take out a tree or two if it was, like problematic, infestation or something like that. We wouldn't
Yeah.
have to, it could be left pretty natural.
Unlike in a developed park where you're bringing a lot of people in and you've got a lot of public kind of around there, you don't have the safety issues and you don't have those types of things. So it kind of just in these types of areas we tend to more just sort of let them be as much as we can.
You've got a ton of ivy down there, much like over there at the Armory.
We certainly
Park.
do. Yeah.
Waterboard Park.
Yeah, waterboard, yeah.
Park, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an issue we're quite familiar with in a lot of places around the city. So.
I know that's a huge effort. It was remarkable sometime last year, maybe the year before, when my family and I went to Mary S. Young. I think I've mentioned this before, and there was like 70 tons of ivy in piles. Amazing. Every tree was de-ivied
Wow.
in Mary S. Young Park, it seemed, as we walked down the trail, and it was just amazing. They had enough of it, so...
You had a massive volunteer
Yes,
party.
correct. I'm sure they did.
That's amazing.
I think I saw the signs, actually, for that volunteer effort, too.
I appreciate what you're saying, Doug, about the trail system, and that's a high value in the master plan. I mean, in the feedback from the city when that master plan was recently done, and we've talked about that before. I think that's for the city, and for me too. I think that's a great feature. The trails. I just remain a little bit skeptical about the value of that land. If it weren't purchased, would it still be sitting there and available to potentially do to have a trail through there? I just don't I don't look at it as something that I think is a high likelihood of somebody being able to develop. That revenue available. Is that very super specific that it's for the acquisition of property? I mean, how much does that terminology in that grant give you any flexibility on that revenue?
It has to be for acquisition. It
Specifically
cannot be
okay.
for development. That's an absolute in the
Okay.
in the bond language. We have an intergovernmental agreement with Metro that spells out what we can do. There's flexibility in the use of those funds for which areas we want to look at purchasing property. Although we have an agreement that kind of lists those priorities, and like I already mentioned, this is our next highest priority that after the high school area property. But it absolutely cannot be used for development. So
Okay.
that's not a consideration for this. It's only for purchase of property.
Is there,
And that, again, this is what we used a big chunk of this fund to buy that Glen Oak property when we purchased that. We bought the Glen Oak property at the time. It was we paid $1.9 million for it, and we used $525,000 from this revenue. So that was, and we had a total of, out of this Metro revenue, we had $988,000 that was allocated to Oregon City. So we used over half of it on that one purchase. So now we're kind of looking at using the remaining 400 and I forget what it is
83, I
exactly.
think.
Yeah, having that report. So, and there is another thing too. We do need to. We've been talking a little bit with the city commission about this issue. Is the use of those funds? They do sunset on us. We've got to spend these by I think it's March 31st of 2012. So we need to be looking at how we want to utilize the rest of these funds. Otherwise, it just basically goes away. It's kind of a use it or lose it thing. So, were you asking
was
a
my
question?
question.
Okay.
I got a comment, and I came into the meeting feeling a lot like Ted, that, admittedly the money is there, but is this a piece of property that has that much value as opposed to something else we might be able to do with it? But I got to say, now that I know that it is adjacent to Metro land, that it's really an extension and not a little island sitting there, makes more sense.
What is the land to the right of it there? I see yellow. It's on
Yeah.
map one. What is
Yeah,
it?
it's private ownership.
That's
Is it
private
one owner or
correct?
two, or can you discuss
There are actually some different owners there, but a lot of it is with one property owner.
It's undeveloped.
Is that developed?
Yeah.
It is not.
It's undeveloped.
Yeah, it is not developed, right. So.
Yeah, we're talking right immediately to the right.
And the
'Cause
that
that's access
probably
to-
looking at that discussion is something that maybe at your next meeting we'll want to schedule an executive session prior to the meeting. You know, we can certainly do that and have a little bit more. I can talk a little bit more freely at that point about looking at contiguous properties and whatever else might be the thought process there. So.
Scott, do you know where that property? It seems like the closer it gets to South End Road, the steeper it is. It seems very steep there by South End Road, up at the top of South End Road, where the corner is. Is there parts when I drove down by that? When I took that road off of there and drove down, it looked like there's like a level up there that's got a little bit of flatness to it, but you can't hardly see back in there. It's so thick, it's overgrown so much. Do you know if there's a portion of this that has a lot less grade to it, or
A
Can you speak to that?
little bit. Probably that what you're talking about, where you're seeing the leveling off, is more to those properties on the map to
yeah,
the right.
probably is, because it looks like that road doesn't really extend up to this
I've
property.
walked much of that property over the last few years, just at different times, and there's a really nice open plateau in some of those other parcels, but not this one.
Not
so
this one?
much.
Any other comments? Ted, anything else?
I don't think so, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, I personally don't see any reason to put any roadblocks in front of the purchase of this property. Having heard all of the information and absorbed that discussion, what does everybody else think?
I agree. I think it looks good.
Yeah, I don't think we need to bring it to a vote, but do we have pretty much a consensus? I've heard you, Ted. Do you have a very strong opinion against?
I think if there was another piece of property that was super compelling that we would want to maybe try to reroute this to, that I would be maybe leaning that way, but it seems like, it's minimal, very minimal cost for the city, so
Lynn?
I'm okay with it.
I think it sounds like a very good idea.
Okay. All right, I think we've heard from everyone.
Yeah, I think that gives me enough to report back to the commission, or I think Commissioner Neely has heard you too, so we'll be able to report back what you've said. I guess there's one more comment on the opportunity here, and looking at this as, sometimes things are opportunistic, and the market that we're in right now, we're probably not going to have a time where we're going to have an opportunity to purchase this for much of a better deal than this. This is, in my opinion, we're getting a very, very good purchase price on this, and I think in a few years down the road it could be worth quite a bit more than it is now, and it probably was a few years ago. So we're kind of in that point where, purchasing property, we're not. Obviously, everybody knows this. It's not going to have a better time to have it be a buyer than we are right now. So I think we need to look at that as well as getting the best bang for these bucks that we have to spend. And so feel good about that part of it as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, and I think we're ready to move on then to the off-leash dog park, and I believe Patrick and Mike are dog park subcommittee task force members, or have some information for us this evening.
Unfortunately, it's going to be kind of minimal. With my newborn baby, I swear I haven't had 5 minutes to even turn a computer on. So I've done some limited research, and Mike, of course, has been out of town, so we're going to promise to get together. Last we talked about, and we were brainstorming, we were kind of identifying that there's dedicated dog parks, which are cost prohibitive. I mean, they have costs involved, and so it's funding will be needed if we go down and start discussing that route. And then the other would be shared dog parks, which currently we have. Parks that we have dogs sharing with, I guess, can anybody help me? What's the official rule? What's the official rule we have here for most of our parks?
Everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome, dogs included. So
Yeah, we just have, the only thing I would say to that is we do have the leash rule.
Right.
Which is sometimes loosely followed.
yeah, so I guess that's a better way of putting it. Do we have any parks specifically that do have off leash at all?
We don't.
Currently?
No.
And so that's, I guess, something we need to discuss is do we want to look at a piece of property that we could do something on that would be the cheaper route. I took it upon myself I haven't gone to a dedicated dog park, not a really polished one, and I did some research online and found a neighboring community that has what we would call the Cadillac of the line as far as dedicated dog parks out in Lake Oswego called Azalea. It's out there by Lesher Farms, and it's fairly new. When you say, Mike, that's
Yeah, it's within the last year or so when they built it out. Year ago, 2 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it's been a
really,
dog
yeah.
park for a long time, but it was essentially undeveloped, and then they spent a bunch of money on it.
Correct, and what they have is they have 2 parks set aside, fenced, probably about 4 or 5 foot height fence. And one for a small dog, one for a large dog, so that there's not much of a skirmish or anything that would happen. And property size for each one was probably looked like about the size of a football field, like in size. And they throw in some bark chips and put up some stands for some bags and poop dispenser, and then they have a kind of a 2-way gate. That you go in and out, so that there isn't a clash of dogs when they first get there. And I witnessed probably about in rainy sunset weather, probably about a dozen dogs in there wrestling around, getting along, and people inside enjoying it, having a great time. It was pretty interesting to see. I then went online and did a little bit more research and found American Kennel Club. They have an online company where they put together a packet on forming dog parks, and they've done some research, as well as a whole bunch of other online companies that have done research into what people do in local communities to get these dedicated dog parks started. Drawbacks, having shared dog parks versus these dedicated dog parks, and the pluses. And I did find that there are a lot of pluses with the dedicated dog parks, such as a very intensive list of rules that are put up, people having to, of course, bring their dogs for that are licensed, and there's just a strict code that they have to follow, and they and these organizations have brought up that communities have grown to really love them. That it's a place for people to go and really feel comfortable, because you're controlling any mishaps that could happen with having a kind of a shared dog park with a loose dog running in traffic, or a little kid or someone who's not quite ready for a dog brushing by them in the middle of a park. The liable question comes up, when you start working our canine friends into a shared condition. So there could be some bonuses to looking at going for a dedicated dog park. where it becomes more of a hub of people bringing their dogs out to exercise. So kind of making it legal, so to speak. But anyways, that's just a little bit of research, and I know that to get any of this really funded, it's going to take a partnership and cooperation of advocate groups, and I'm open for what you guys think, who to approach, and how far do we want to go, and what do we want to look into. Mike, what's your take?
Well, a couple of thoughts. To me, this is it's a complicated thing to wrap your mind around, because literally, our two neighboring communities, West Lynn put up signs in the little stands, no fence, whatever, in an existing park. That's their dog park. Lake Oswego did the dedicated park, the two areas, restrooms, benches. So obviously that's probably the more desirable end of it, but is that realistic with the funding? So, where do you draw the line in the sand that we want to be able to provide it, but how much money can we throw at it? So I found myself just spinning my wheels trying to figure out where to go. And the other thing, I suspect that there's a pretty sizable, pretty passionate group out there that would like to see this happen in the city. And so I hope that we can leave tonight from the group with sort of a yes or no that we can go public with this on the city website, in the newspaper, get ocdogpark.com, sign up here if you're interested. Or are we ready to do that because we may throw this out and then can't perform?
There's a lot of issues when you start making it public, especially if you go all the way to dedicated dog park. There has to be a very thorough partnership with whatever community that this would go. A lot of people who don't own dogs and pets would probably have some questions and want to know, what would this bring to their community. So there's going to have to be a lot of publicity and conversations, I think, to include the community, because from what I've gathered, it becomes a big issue with the people for, people against, and so how would we approach that?
I certainly think you're going to need to get input over a decent period of time before you do anything. And you would almost want to set it up as, for lack of a better word, a blog. You would set up what we've discussed so far, what our ideas were as a committee, and then putting that out to the people for more input. And I know, of course, one of the first questions is going to be, well, where are the considerated pieces of property for this?
Right.
And either to keep that ongoing as in a blog form, to where you guys or somebody would answer back, and then reaching out to these groups, because I imagine too that there's some people that are pretty. As soon as they found out there was talk of a dog park, that you have a lot of people on your side. I think you have a majority of people saying yes, I think it's a great idea, than you would have people saying no way, not in my city. I really do. I think you're going to have a lot of people very positive about this. So. It is a democratic society, right?
Well, there's a lot of pluses to it. A lot
Yes,
of
there is.
community. When we took our tour, it was kind of the joke when we were taking our tour that we were looking for, what's the main activity in some of our parks, and we saw it. And the majority of people on the parks, as we took this tour, half dozen parks people walking their dogs, families out with their dogs. I mean, they are part of families here, and so it's not about the dog so much as it is. It becomes a great community draw.
People like to talk to other people that have dogs.
Yeah. And have them interact.
And then why couldn't this become sort of a private-public partnership too, from either a group of people that are, or a few companies. There's some, not mom and pop, I don't want to say, but there's a few mom and pop pet shops here in Oregon City, and some big ones too, to possibly get on board and donate money to help get this going too. So,
Right.
but you need to get you definitely just want to put it out there. I don't know what from the city's view.
That's typical. I mean, that's a
How that
pretty
process
standard
works.
process, isn't it? To go out and solicit for the city to go out and solicit input, and to get before you, certainly to get something off the ground.
So a survey.
You
Yeah. That's,
Well, we could absolutely review the information that we've already collected. As we all know, I think that the master plan actually says dog park in it, and there's a significant amount of people who responded to it. Right? Isn't there mention of a dog park in the master plan as one of the?
Yeah.
I thought in the master plan, stop me.
It,
I thought out of all the questionnaires I remember, my memory might be that, I thought dog park would be way down on those spots. Prior to that, because I was going to comment that dog parks was not a high priority for the community for the master plan. So that, I'll refer to Scott to remind me if this is correct.
I think we talked about that at our last
was just
crack
trying to
meeting a
look
little
for
bit,
it.
and it's on the. I'd say this. It's on the radar screen.
right.
Yeah.
And also.
That was a.
Can I?
I think the ideas and the way it was presented may not have been such that it wasn't put out there as a something that was
and when did that survey happen? I mean, that came out of our
Right.
last meeting. It's like, that was a few years back. And from what
The
we're
survey-
hearing,
2007.
the survey was in 07.
07.
The park plan was adopted in 08. So it's been a few years.
Pretty recent.
I'll repeat something I said a couple of meetings ago, but Larry, you weren't here. There's a chart in the master plan, and I can find the page where people were asked to rank things that they. Do me a favor, go back to that chart and ask yourself, do we offer this? And you'll find if you go down the list, certainly we could offer more of any of those things, but the first one you'll find on the list that we do not offer at all in our system is an off-leash dog park. So, I mean, obviously, I'm an advocate for that, so that's my spin on it. But, all the things that were more important, we do offer. The first one that we don't offer at all is an off-leash dog park.
And I think I've mentioned this probably a couple times or so. There's also kind of the informal feedback and the sort of the pulse and the feel of the community that you get from my job. And I think I would have to say, there's different ways you could look at how that was analyzed in the master plan. But I get a sense from what I hear, phone calls and emails and just different communications, that I think there's folks out there that would really like to see this. It's probably a minimum of once a week that somebody says dog park to me.
Yeah, I get the same.
When are we going to have a dog park, or why don't we have a dog park? And I wouldn't
where
say
is the
that
dog park?
that one person probably
Where is the
represents.
dog park? Yeah.
I don't know how many other people, but I really do feel that there's probably it's out there, and it's one of those things that once you tapped into that network or whatever, kind of like what Steve was saying or something, I think you'd find it. So I just kind of a couple thoughts that come to mind in terms of where do you want to go and how do you want to get there or whatever. Here's what I would kind of suggest, and take this and do whatever you want with it, but if there's a consensus with PRAC that you want to continue to move forward and explore this, which I think there is, but you can kind of confirm that, is my suggestion would be that Patrick and Mike, probably the two of you at least, and anybody else that's interested, want to get together with my staff and I at some opportunity that we can, I know people work and that kind of stuff, maybe we can find a time, maybe even over the holidays when people have a couple extra hours or something, that we could sit around a table with a big map and kind of really hone in on what are the potential properties. I think that's really one of the bigger questions, is what are we looking at? Is it within an existing park or in an undeveloped park area or some other property that we don't even own, or that, whatever, and kind of I think we've kicked around that a lot, but it'd be nice to kind of start to formalize that a little bit. And then I think what we could do is probably with the PrAC leading, because I think this is really kind of more becoming what I would consider to be like a grassroots effort type of a thing, is put the word out, pick a date, and have kind of a sort of a casual open meeting or open house or something. We could facilitate that for you at one of our facilities, and put the word out into the community through the avenues that I think at the pet stores, I think at the veterinarians,
Right.
Barkley Hills and Milner's Veterinarian and all those folks that are, I don't mean to leave anybody off the list, but I mean and you put up flyers at their shops and you tell them about it, and they'll probably spread the word, and just find ways to tap into that that network and see if, and call for a meeting and just say, hey, this is just get a feel for what's going on. We would just want to kick this around and brainstorm it, and come into that meeting with maybe at least an idea of what we're talking about, some potential sites, nothing real, you don't want to get too specific and pin yourself into any corners or anything like that, but and then just kind of try to get a sense of what's out there. That's I think that would be my suggestion as to how to kind of move forward. So I'd make myself available to meet with you guys whenever we could all get together with the working schedule. I mean, it's my job, so I'm available, but when you guys could do that, because I realize you'd be doing this on your own time. So, and then try to help to maybe set something up in the early part of 2011 where you could pin down a date and throw it out there and maybe begin to sort of get more of a sense of that.
Yeah. I want to try to track down some people that have already done some of this. We have neighboring small towns. That's what's kind of inspiring to me, too, is there's many different small communities that surround us that have not just shared, but dedicated dog parks. Aurora, Happy Valley, Lake Oswego, Westland, Wilsonville, Milwaukee,
Boy,
Corbett,
that'd be a good input for you,
Troutdale,
wouldn't it?
Forest Grove. I mean,
That'd be good input to talk to some of these
yeah,
people
all
about
these
how they
small
know about that.
these small towns already have dedicated dog parks. So there's something out there.
I sure like
it's
Scott
more than just
suggested,
Portland.
though, as a method, as a process for us to, get this thing moving. And
Right.
Yeah,
So
so you guys
the-
could talk about what you've learned from these other cities
Right.
and just present, hey, this is what we're talking about, and getting, or is, Scott, or you suggest just like a public forum, and then inviting people to say
Exactly.
what they think, and
Exactly.
we listen, and then we continue to move forward. And that's cool.
So,
Sorry, I'm leaving now.
have
You're welcome to stay involved in that.
Larry, what would be some of your biggest concerns as far as maintenance on something like that? Does anything jump out at you?
Besides poop.
For shared, dedicated, both.
I don't like the shared ones. I don't think they're, the dedicated ones that I've seen, you've got to have a lot of buy-in. You want to have the groups, because we don't have the manpower or resources to maintain it to a standard that it needs to be maintained. That is my biggest concern, is that you have some buy-in from these groups that are going to adopt it and take care of it. And the last thing I would say is you want to make sure, I've been researching it for years too, is you want to make sure it's big enough that it will withstand the pressure. Because if it's too small,
Could be a
it
mud
turns
park.
into just a mud pit.
Yeah.
And trying to close it and restore it is
Yeah.
a PR nightmare again. So, you've got to really, Portland did a really poor job. I came from Portland Parks. When they did their dog parks, they did a
That's one of my bulldogs.
reaction, and it has to be thoughtful, and it has to be thoughtful
Yeah.
through very slowly, so you don't have the problems. I mean, they've had pollution problems, they've had run-ins, they've had some real problems in other communities. It's not just get generic now.
Sure.
But so we do need to really research it and be real careful about how you decide it.
Yeah.
And I think the buy-in is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's going to be the largest thing is the buy-in. And the limited research I've done, the successful dog parks have got, some case studies around the country, and they had tremendous buy-in. They had groups helping fund it and helping the manpower and maintain it. From bark dust brought in instead of just regular mud to fencing and recycled bags, all that stuff. I mean, it's.
He's at less than 6 months.
We do not have a site at this time that would lend itself to a dog park. I cannot.
He wants to be a
think of
bird
single
dog
site
someday.
that would lend itself.
Aspiring.
I've researched private property, and maybe it's some possible interest in possibly leasing it to the city.
What do you mean?
What about-
We don't have a space that would, for 100, like a football-sized field, dedicated park.
The field's too small. The minimum size from the classes that I've gone to and attended, they said a 3-acre site is about as small as you want to go.
3 acre.
3 acres. And that's smaller than that, they said they've had problems with maintenance. So this is cities and municipalities that have done it in the past, and this is what they've learned from. So I would go more reinvent the wheel. Like you said, you want to go out and interview and see what works and what doesn't. This is what I've heard now. There might be other things that work too.
Larry, I think it's great the discussion's already started, and these are the type of things that need to bubble up and we need to talk about in a subcommittee. And the process that I would like to suggest, and we're already talking about it. Obviously, we need to gather information not only to make a decision, but we need to gather information so we can present at some point our findings. The pros and cons, for instance, of a shared dog park versus a dedicated dog park. The pros and cons of each of these specific locations that we have come up with, perhaps, within the city of Oregon City that exist already. And having done that homework, then we can move forward and confidently say, well, I think I have enough information to make a decision on this. I've researched another part of information that I would want is, what have other surrounding communities done? What do they look like? So when you get all that together, which is I would suggest is not going to happen for several months, and I'm thinking May or June before we even should shoot for a time where we would want to talk about this to anyone else outside this room or the staff, etc., before we get our ducks in a row or dogs in a row, so to speak, or bulldogs in your case, Steve. But I think we should do our due diligence in this process and make sure that we've got all the pros and cons lined out, and we've done a thorough investigation of what the city of Oregon City already could offer with what properties we have. And also, we've thoroughly investigated the pros and cons of a shared or a dedicated dog park and listed them out. I mean, have that information available to any public meeting that we would have or survey. We could present it generally to a larger audience, and then eventually, perhaps, we can present it specifically to a smaller audience who it would affect. I mean, if we're saying, hey, this park looks really good for a dog park, and I guess the surrounding community certainly would have a little bit more to say about that, probably, than the general populace of the city of Oregon City. So there would be different surveys or different questions asked. Anyway, I'm partly just thinking out loud right now, but I think it's pretty involved, obviously, staff work and et cetera. But I think my opinion, I think it's going to take a while before we're ready to talk about it. May, June, early summer. Late spring.
Before we're ready to do what?
Before we're able to, here's a survey, here's a public forum, let's talk, that type of thing.
Well, I think you're just going to need to remind people along the way that the reason we're moving so slow on this, whether that's their opinion or not, is just to make sure we're doing it right the first time. And we're learning, and if it got out there, I'm just saying.
A lot of information to gather.
There's a lot of information to gather, a lot of.
But that's why I think we need to get it out there.
Can I ask,
sooner rather than later?
Has there been any
to judge how much interest there is to get more perspectives than just what we're going to have from the group?
I think one of the things we'll find, though, Mike, is whether or not we can even do it. I mean, with advice and counsel of somebody like Larry or other experts, that we even have a suitable area where it's even feasible to do it.
But I think
Right?
I think you need some input on what the community wants
Right.
before you can decide if you have a site to do that.
Yeah, because, if the community wants a piece of their park to be redesigned for something, that could be a possibility. Has any group brought anything up at a city meeting or filled out some kind of contacted anyone about dog park requests?
No,
Any
not-
groups at all?
No, not as a group, not that formally. Again, just my take on that is just the occasional feedback that I get,
Sure,
in,
and same with me. right.
individuals, and I think it's there really is no group or organization out there that, at least in our community, that exists that
Yeah.
has been pushing this. So this is the true grassroots level here of looking at trying to maybe formulate something.
My question is more than what we've identified as on the agenda as the off-leash dog park. Maybe what we want to start is with a larger discussion of dedicated dog park, and then looking at pros and cons of off-leash or not. And that would still be a step forward, and it would still be saying, we're listening to you in the community and trying to meet an additional need. I mean, it allows the discussion without having the conclusion decided. I don't know.
I think it's a good point about at least giving a perception that, hey, we're
Dedicating, right.
yeah, and when we're pursuing something that's an interest of the community.
I don't think there's any argument that there's a need for this based on. I mean, Larry could probably tell you on a daily basis how many dogs are running off leash in our parks, and actually the value of, if nothing else, just from a management perspective, regardless of whether the community perceives that they want a standalone dog park, whatever that definition is. I think that's the question you're asking, is what are we defining this as? And we don't know yet. But just from a management perspective, for us to be able to direct people who are out running their dogs in the parks off leash and all the things that go with that, the possible negative interactions with people and the activities that they're doing that don't necessarily want to be greeted by a dog running up and sticking their nose in their belly or their paws on their chest or whatever it is, or frankly the dog waste that comes in areas of parks that we'd really wish that they didn't leave those deposits. And of course we're trying to do the program to encourage people to clean that up with the dispensers and so forth. But anyway, my point is just from a purely practical and a management standpoint, there's absolutely no argument that if we had a dog park, that we could advertise and tell people, instead of running here, why don't you go use our dog park?
Redirect.
And if we had that option, it would be good. It's just a matter of determining whether we have a feasible site to do that, and there is a cost. And then I think Larry hit the nail on the head with his points about the maintenance. It's significant. It doesn't seem like it would be. You just think, well, just go stick a little fence up around an area and you got yourself a dog park. It's not that easy. I have managed dog parks in other cities that I've worked for, and it is more complex than you would think it would be. So you do have to think through those things. So there's some issues that way, but in terms of just saying, is there a need, without even going out and surveying the community, I can tell you there's a need.
Yeah, but times are changing. 10, 20 years ago, this wasn't a desire, probably, and we're definitely seeing this as being a thing that families are doing and wanting their parks to offer. And I think you're right. We all know that we would love to have one. Okay.
So what's the first
So
step?
we got some footwork to do.
Just
What are they going to
Research.
They're going
Yeah,
to just
I
continue
mean,
to
I
more
bring
research.
back
suggest
information to the group?
we research the pros and cons of, and just get all that information first. You know, you're looking at it, and then
Yeah.
present it here, and then we go from there. Not just pros and cons of what type of park, but then what properties potentially in your meeting with, staff.
Okay.
And I'd like, I can offer up and send up an email and just put those thoughts on, in the electronic format there, and you guys can pick it apart. And
So if we continue doing research, can we, I'm assuming that we could perhaps have an advertised meeting where we disclose information we find and what's available, and maybe some groups would want to come out and be a part of it? I mean, that's the goal, is to gain people that are, interested and get support for this, because there's just no funding for it, right? So we
there's
could,
different ways to go out and do that as well. Yeah.
so we can have a forum to advertise a meeting and set something up to do that. Yes.
If that's the desire of the group, I can certainly help
Yeah.
make that work, yeah.
Okay. Because otherwise, we'd just be spinning our wheels to find the research, and if we're not really getting the information out to anyone, it's not going to happen unless we get outside support, right?
Right.
So.
Depending
Again, I
on what
just-
option is chosen, I mean, if you go with the option of a shared park, it's much less expensive.
Right.
So as a
But
next
is that desirable? So.
Okay.
as a next step, the subcommittee will get together with Scott and schedule a time
That's
to
my
get together with
suggestion.
you
Yeah,
guys.
I think the two of you, and I'll make myself available, and Larry and potentially Denise, whichever of us need to be involved, and we'll make ourselves available to meet, and I think we just need to kind of roundtable it a little bit and
Sure.
take this conversation and keep going with it.
Excellent.
Okay.
So, I want to just clarify this a little. Obviously, the first thing that we need to do is get together with Larry, Scott, Denise, staff. But our next meeting is the 27th of January. It's almost 2 months away. So if we're able to have that meeting and come to a consensus that, yeah, there are possibilities, prior to our next PrAC meeting, can we go outside this room and the TV camera up there that two people might look at and say that this is being considered?
Sure, absolutely. If we are confident we have enough information to make.
So what I'm
I just
asking
look at-
is if, when the group of us meet, prior to the next PrAC committee meeting, if we feel confident enough that, yeah, we could do it to one degree or another, could we start that outreach?
That's a decision of the subcommittee more than it is for PrAC. I mean, if you
Okay,
guys.
well, I don't want, we go out there and blast it out there, and then you guys start getting phone calls. I don't wanna-
Well, I mean, I think it would be appropriate if you arrive at that decision, and we can discuss that matter in January, and if we agree to that, which I mean, even having said what I've previously said about how long it takes to move a noodle up a hill,
Got a wet noodle or
a wet noodle. I could see that it could, with enough work and chugging away at numbers and such, it could be done by then. So I don't see a problem with that if we all feel we have enough information to make a decision, or at least go to the next step. That's my opinion.
You want to do it before the next meeting?
No, I don't know that. I don't know that we can.
Oh.
But if we can, I mean, it is 2 months. If we can we? Are we allowed to?
You're not going back
Yeah.
to China, are you?
No, well,
Well, I would.
Well, let's just I would say be ambitious. I mean, the part of this committee that I love, and it's starting to develop even more, is what we're passionate about. I mean, we're on a committee, and it's an advisory committee. We can advise. We can advise on issues like this, and it's really pretty cool. I mean, we're not flying off the handle and just coming up with weird and strange ideas.
Right.
We are looking at the master plan. We're thinking, okay, this is something that is needed, and then we have people who have passion, and we're assigning responsibilities, and we're getting stuff done. So that type of passion is driving, and if we can drive that passion down this road and get a whole lot of stuff done before January 27th, I'm all for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think one of the things you need to be concerned about is also if you've got residences around the park and if you have objections from the neighbors around the park, if you're looking at existing parks. I mentioned the park right across from my house is Barclay Park. No neighbors have a problem with the dogs there. The fact is that everybody goes there, unleashes their dogs. I don't know, what is it, 2 acres or so? Not that big.
Not even that.
Well, the wooded, if you included the wooded portion, which nobody goes into, maybe
Yeah.
it's that
Right.
big. So it would not be something you want as a major park. But I guess the thing is, you probably don't enforce the leash laws unless you're having a problem with a given park.
Right.
I mean,
If we're having a problem, then we'll go.
yeah. So I mean, that's probably a good law to have in force. I use the trail along Clackamas Cove a lot. I jog on it. About half of the people have their dogs on leashes. About half of them don't. But most of the people have their dogs under voice control. As you jog there, yeah, one of the dogs gets excited, will like to run around along with you, but usually the person in question is able to call their dog back. There's a few exceptions. I don't know if you ever get very many complaints about dogs on Clackamas.
From bike riders who
Mm-hmm.
where
Yeah,
the
they're-
dogs are running loose and they're worried about.
Yeah. Actually,
Chasing violence.
there's confrontations between joggers and bike riders too. So I guess I'm not saying one way or another about a dedicated park, but there are probably some parks just because there are no other amenities like Barclay Park. We don't have any picnic tables there. Some people go out there, throw out a blanket and have a picnic, squat it on the ground or something like that. But I've never heard an issue from any of the neighbors about the dogs being running free there. And so maybe some of these places you're just going to take a relaxed position. You want to advertise as a dog park because you probably would have complaints from the neighbors because you have so many dogs there. But kind of get a survey of the neighbors as well in terms of what they thought.
Right about
Certainly.
that is the Cove Trail. There's a few parks that we do call like code enforcement, Chapin Park, Hillendale Park, Clackamas. There's where we have some intermixing of people calling and then complaining, and then we have to respond. Clackamas, that's one
Be the
part
third
I think should be
cons.
very well enforced because of the interaction between the dogs and the wildlife. We lose a lot of wildlife down there, and they're federally protected. So you have to be careful about that.
You lose a lot of wildlife down there to dogs?
Ducks?
We lose ducks and geese, and those are both federally protected.
Just kind of one of the issues there is people feed the geese and so forth, and that just
Yeah, that tames them.
Well, even by federally protected, they're hunted, but you cannot harass them or kill them, except for during hunting season. I mean, but in a park, I mean, they are a federal species, so you're not supposed to let your dogs kill them. So that's a big no.
Okay.
Since the subcommittee seemed to be asking for our blessings, I just want to say, if you're willing to do the work to pull this together, by all means.
Go for it.
And I think we've said in many different ways that it's an obvious need in the community. So
Feels like we have our marching orders.
let's-
Get to work.
To put it in Brian's vernacular.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. Okay, we'll move on to the goal update in progress there, and I'll just, I guess I'll start by saying I'm happy of the progress we are making on our goals. I've got my sheet out that Scott had updated for us with the blue print there below each of the goals and how far we've come so far, and I'm looking at that. At the same time, I think you all received my email where I updated that list of not really priorities. That might be a misnomer, because we talked about that. It's in a certain order, yes, but not necessarily a priority order. And I don't know if you guys brought that along with you or not, the email that I sent out.
Oh, I have your email. Yeah,
Okay.
Scott's making me a copy of the other.
Okay. So I think, we could have a very long discussion on this, or we could have a shorter discussion on this. And
It's going to have to be a short discussion of where we are on the agenda. From the time.
well, what I would suggest that we do is perhaps agree on a few things, like with the help of our staff. I know Scott's been working on this. I don't want to short anybody else who's also been working on it, but look at our goals, our 2010 goals, and eliminate the ones 1 through 10 there that we can, if there is any. And I think we can perhaps even use Scott to help us out with that behind the scenes, and not really have to go over that right here tonight. But what do you guys think? That's one thing, is just eliminate the goal, any of the goals that are we have already agreed on that we are finished with.
And isn't that list pretty current?
It is
from
current.
our last meeting. We spent a fair amount of time on it last meeting, did we not?
Mm-hmm. The last meeting we talked, I think, about each one of them. Yes.
Does anybody
correct.
else need, for a refresher, a copy of the stuff from the last? Here, I'll just. If anybody wants a fresh copy, you can pass those down.
Thanks,
The
Scott.
same thing, yeah. I meant to bring this.
I guess determine future use of the Carnegie Center. Obviously we're going to keep that one on. That's number 6. We're investigating the dog parks. Number 7. Maybe reaching the tail end of number 8 there, naming trail linkages and standard signage.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
So are we complete on number 8?
Well, I wouldn't quite
Yeah,
say that.
okay.
No, portions of it. But what we've done is we've done a plan to conceptualize what the trail signage would look like, so that when we do have the opportunities to fund different pieces of that, like we're doing with the McLaughlin Promenade, and those signs are just about to go in.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing some stuff down, hopefully down on the riverfront in the coming year. We've got a standardized design package,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where we're at, but we don't have all of the linkages actually made with the signage.
Yeah, so you could get
So
rid of
it'll-
the standardized sign.
But once we have-
linkages piece.
Exactly.
Okay.
Good call.
Number 9 is work with the city in the process for determining the use of the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center site. We've done that, although that process I don't think has reached its conclusion. Would that be appropriate to drop from our goals?
I'd like to see it stay on there myself.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like I'd like to keep it for visibility, and if we determine that that process really becomes dormant, for lack of a
Okay.
better term, then maybe at that point we would. But I think it's still active discussion, is it not, Scott? For the,
Yes. Correct.
for the commission.
How is the new director of the Clackamas County Historical Society? How is she involved in this? I remember reading the article. Is she?
Not really.
Not really.
That I'm aware of at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't mention at all the EOT, the end of the Oregon Trail. That article did
It
it?
did. Well, I'm trying to.
I don't think it did.
Or I thought she was talking about a piece of it, or wanting to get involved in helping or something. I'd have to reread the article.
I don't remember it talking about that. I know we've had a lot of discussion about that making sense for
I'm not
that
aware of
all
that.
Okay. I'm just curious. I'll read the article.
to be together.
Okay, we'll leave number 9, and then I think we can, number 10 can actually drop off.
I've got a question about number 6.
Yes, sir.
Given that the Eastham School thing fell apart and the library is now way out there, should this kind of go dormant for 2010? There's not going to be anything to decide on the Carnegie Center in 2010 because it's going to still be the library.
Well, I think part of our goal, there have been goals in the past where we have just kept on our goals list, just so we could have visibility and potential updates. But I
Okay.
hear you loud and clear, Mike.
It makes sense to me what Mike's saying. I mean, it's really not a question right now.
It's not a goal.
Yeah.
It's just maybe it would be something to visit on the agenda or something periodically. I don't know.
Periodically.
First, a disposition has to be made with the library.
Right.
When that happens,
We'll know.
and it's moved, then it's going to become a question again.
Yeah.
That'll
But
be
no one
It's
knows
years,
when that
though,
is.
right? 'Cause
Well-
they're
It's going to be a while. The city's going to enter into a process where we're going to reevaluate all the potential sites and properties and, existing buildings or vacant properties or whatever. So I can't tell you what the timeline's going to be, but it'll be a while. What I can tell you is when that does become an issue, when, the library is going to move out of the Carnegie Center, there's going to be a lot of time to deal with that decision of how to transition the Carnegie Center. So this will just naturally come up.
Drop it.
Yeah, I would.
My vote would be to drop that. I think we got enough information on here. It's not current. In my opinion,
I would say sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just the recommendation that was made by the task force and the consultant that was presented earlier this year to the commission, that's still valid. It's just been kind of, it'll probably just sort of go dormant for a while as the library figures out what to do. So that piece is still there, though, and that wasn't a wasted effort. It's just kind of in
But if it goes
Can't
2,
begin
3
next year.
years, I mean,
Could.
that would be. It's going to be a whole new ballgame
it
then.
could be.
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
3 years goes fast.
Well, I mean, we could be waiting that long, but there could be discussions about options within a few months, potentially.
But I thought the report was already submitted to the council.
The recommendations on the Carnegie
Yeah.
Center, it has been correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
So I guess
within
I'm
the next-
confused.
within the next-
What do we have left to do then if your the committee that you were on has already made their recommendation?
Well, I would say
It
the
could
same
stay there.
thing, for the same reason that the Native Oregon Trail Interpretive Center is still on
Yeah.
there. And that's because we're kind of waiting on.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's there, but we don't
But,
really have anything to do on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I don't know.
It's not a goal.
It could go either way.
I wouldn't really see it as a goal anymore. It's just because Scott's going to bring it
Yeah,
forth. In,
provide updates.
It'd be more maybe turn into an update now as opposed to a goal. Whatever you want to do.
My,
Mr.
my,
I guess
my opinion would
as long
be
as
let's
it's,
keep
as
this.
it's the library, it's not under prac, right?
Right.
I would
That's
suggest-
another way to look at it.
I mean, for the value of this document, I would say let's remove things like those that we're not making decisions on. And keep
And then we'll
this,
just get periodic
keep
updates.
this, keep this to things that we can have an impact on right now. I mean, you make a good point about the end of the Trail Interpretive Center also. There's also been a recommendation on that. The difference being that site's not occupied. I mean, it's available right now for if there was a plan to move forward with something, it's available to do that right now, unlike the Carnegie Center.
Got it.
But I'm for keeping this list with items that
Okay.
we can actually.
So take
in my
6 out
opinion,
and 10 out, and leave the rest.
6 and 9. Oh,
6 and
6
10.
and 10.
oh, I'm sorry, 6 and 10. Okay.
All right, and then, like I said before, this email that I sent out. Did everybody see this email with the bullets that I put together? Like I said before, these are discussion points, really. I mean, most of these come directly out of the. I mean, they're not things that I've invented. I'm not that creative, but they come out of the master plan. I mean, and so they have some credence as to why they're even on this piece of paper. And what I would like us to do is really put your mind to this and other things too. This is, we're not limited to this. You're not limited to this information. This is like, okay, Watt built the slide, and now we get to comment on it and hack it up. And we started that last time because, for instance, additional staff went from, down there on the non-prioritized list, but I prioritized a little higher on that list to be number 2. But I think it's worth our taking a look at things like this and then potentially moving those over to the goals. And anyway, for instance, I mean the first one I have on the list, and I'll just speak to this and this one only. We've talked about additional staff, but our pool is really in, I mean, the best shape it's been in a long time. Okay, and when the facelift happened recently, it's pretty remarkable from the old from the new. So, yeah. So, but having said that, it's still an old building with a lot of maintenance that's been deferred. And I really, really strongly believe that not only the staff who is responsible for these buildings, but we can make a strong recommendation or give strong advice that the pool ought to take higher priority if that's our recommendation, if that's something that we agree upon. Again, in discussion here, and it's only one instance, but I was sitting here when the city manager said these are the types of things we need to talk about in fun in the off year or in the out years. Things like, we're looking at this huge, incredible mountain of maintenance that needs to be done, and I always add the slide that'll eventually need to be replaced, and we get only this much every year for the pool, and if you want to do anything beyond that, it's a no-go. So why can't we say the pool is a higher priority for additional funding through whatever out-year planning that we suggest that the commission do? And that's really the basis of all these things. I think the RV park is an incredibly fantastic idea. And if you look at one of Denise's products that she sent us, you look at look at a lot of positive figures on there, and it's we make a lot of money. Not really a lot, I'm just putting that in quotes, but there's a positive turnover. And with all that we are talking about with the Cove and everything else and these plans that we can see and someday hopefully will be realized, I can also see an RV park that's, wow, it's, you've got waterfront RV park and a new site. So, that's why I kind of put that in there. It's also in our goals as well. But these things I think we can offer up to the commission and say, let's start planning on these things. So if you guys want to digest this list a little bit more and add things that you believe are important, let's keep this going in email traffic, and maybe bring this back in January, on January 27th, and hash this out again, and maybe transfer some of those over to our list here, and come up with a separate list that we would recommend to the commission that because ostensibly we are all working off of the master plan and they're making decisions off of a master plan. We are only offering up a refined list of items that we think are most important. We would like to offer this up in some shape or format to the commission. What do you guys think?
It seems to me like those who are on the commission also have a major responsibility in planning a budget, and they also have access to the figures, and they would know what's coming in and what's going out and what are the most expensive programs. So it would seem like, because we're talking about maintenance has been deferred because of costs, I'm sure, and so it really feels like this is more within their realm of responsibility than it is for us to say to them, start spending money on this and take it away from these other departments. maybe that's an oversimplification, but so it seems.
No, I think I see what you're saying. Any other comments?
I still think we have to advise.
I think they rely on our recommendations, and I think they they're soliciting our input for that. I think they really value that.
So we would recommend to the budget committee, the city budget committee, and then they recommend to the city council. How does that process work? What is our role
We
in
just
that?
advise to the commission with what goals we have as an advisory committee, and
Okay.
then they take it on. Correct, Scott?
Yeah. You're and to staff. You're an advisory committee to both to the city commission and to staff. So we, as staff, I take a lot of feedback from this committee and use that as we do different things, prepare budgets or develop priorities or look at projects and different things like that. But definitely, you're an advisory committee to the commission, and there are different avenues of how you could do this, but you have the opportunity or the right or whatever you want to say to go forth to the commission at any time, kind of like what you were talking about when you were interviewing the PRAC committee members or the PRAC applicants for the committee and saying, occasionally we go before the city commission to do whatever. Well, you can go forth to the commission at any of their meetings, either, and there's a standing item at the beginning of each commission meeting that you could walk in and give your 3 minutes and say, hey, I'm representing PRAC and here's something I want to put in front of you. Or you can request, we've done this in the past, where we actually do a prepared presentation to the city commission where it's on their agenda, either on a specific topic or just as kind of an annual update or an occasional update. We've done that before. I'm trying to remember if PRAC did that at the beginning of last calendar year. It seems like we did, but that's something we might want to talk about as well. Is some of the city's boards and committees will actually plan an annual presentation to the city commission and request a time slot on an agenda and ask for 10 minutes or whatever, and the chair or whoever wants to go forth and speak will come forth with a kind of just here's what we're doing as your committee, and also here's some of our priorities, and here's some requests that we want to make of you, and that type of thing. So there's different ways you can go about it.
That's a good idea.
And it's really up to you how you want to do that.
I think we should do that.
PRAC has done that in the past. It's just been a little sporadic, but the last, 2 or 3 years, it seems like it's been a little sporadic. But there's been times, at least since I've been here, and I've been here 6 years, I know that there have been at least a few occasions where PRAC has gone forward and given kind of an annual report. But it seems like it might have been a little while since we've done that. So maybe that's something we can kind of look at doing in the next year.
Let's solidify our cool committee status.
So we've combed through the master plan. We've come up with a list of what we believe are important projects. And I think, and this is speaking to what Lynn was talking about. We would be speaking to what we should consider our area of expertise, being who we are. It's a Parks and Rec master plan. We're the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. So I think I think we should take that and run with it.
Grant, can I real quickly just
Yes, sir.
one concern on this list, and it's the elephant on the list, and it is the pool, which is it's a tremendous asset. And I was involved in a neighborhood pool board in another city nearby, and we could spend every dime we have on the pool. And I know that there's a number of projects at the pool that I think would be really high priorities. But there's others, I think that one needs to be broken up and prioritized. Because, for instance, I got to be honest, it's hard for me to even say slide and $100,000 in the same sentence. I just can't get that to make any sense to me in terms of the value and what you can. We're buying how many acres of parkland?
7.2.
For $120,000 and a $100,000 slide. I don't want to pick on that one.
The world of slides.
I think there's so much money because of the deferred maintenance and things we like to do and the waiting area outside and all of that, that I think that the pool one really needs to get chopped up and prioritized wherever the individual projects go as we go forward.
Absolutely.
So,
And I know a person that could help us do that.
yeah, over there.
Denise. She's saying you go, guys, and Lynn. So, good, very good point, Mike. Yeah, I agree. You've got to define what that means. You know, you can't just say pool.
It's just- no. I mean, it's a tremendous asset.
Yeah.
But boy, money runs out almost fast as the water can run out.
Yes. Okay, so let's have some of those discussions on email, and then Okay. Anything else?
Well, I applaud your efforts there. I mean, basically what you're doing in big picture, not just specific to one bullet, is you're directing this committee, and we're going to be a lot more effective with that by doing that. So, good job.
Thanks, Ted.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Point the way.
Absolutely.
Good job.
Okay, park hours. And we had almost made a decision, but we wanted you to give us one more piece of information, Scott.
Yeah, that was the follow-up with the police department I think you're talking about, right?
Right.
So I did communicate with our police department and really put the question out there, what's your opinion? Is this an issue? The feedback I got was the hours aren't really going to be a deterrent per se. It's just, and I think I said this a little bit at the last meeting. To me, it's more of it's an enforcement issue. If somebody's breaking the law, they're breaking the law, whether whether the park is technically closed or not. I think there's probably a segment of the community that wants to use the park into the dark hours, especially during the early dark time of the year that we're in right now, that people do go out and walk and do that. So based on that information, my own opinion, but also the feedback from the police department, which is really the opinion that I got was it really isn't. They wouldn't recommend a change in the hours if that's what you're asking, and I that's also what my recommendation would be at this time. I don't. It's kind of if it's not broken, don't fix it, and I really haven't heard any strong, compelling reason why we'd want to change it at the moment. So.
Well, that's kind of the way the conversation began, and that there was some things that were going on that could be potentially not law abiding, and if our authority on that issue says that it's really not a problem, then I think the other things we've talked about, notwithstanding those, I think I'm satisfied that we ought to keep the hours the same.
Thank you.
Another thing you that I thought was important, that last meeting, you brought some comparisons from some other communities, and we're right in line with what other communities are doing as far as park hours. So
that's true.
that meant a lot to me.
Okay. Pleased to announce this is letter Foxtrot under 4.
I was hoping my last name you'd use.
Throw out some
You haven't done it
phonetics.
yet. Yeah. You started at F.
Yeah, letter Foxtrot. Well, the mayor-elect was here. I didn't want to start throwing out Echo and Foxtrot and Delta.
But you have a historicity of doing that.
Exactly. I was going to speak up about it.
So let it be known that Mr. Stephen Orr and Mr. Brian Burke they submitted their applications to be a part of this committee, and we voted favorably in both instances for Mr. Burke and also for Mr. Orr. And the next step is that Scott will forward those names to the mayor, and they'll either have a personal meeting with the mayor, another one potentially, or just the mayor will sign off on their appointment. So we'll know about that fairly soon, I would imagine. I think Scott might send an email out pretty soon. So, okay.
But you might mention they weren't voted in without a lengthy interrogation.
And you forgot to, because you're so humble, you didn't want to mention yourself, but that PrAC also kind of affirmed that your you've applied for reappointment for another term, and we didn't scare you away these first few years, so you've reapplied, and that PrAC also recommended to support your reappointment. So I'll be passing that along.
Yeah, right. And certain restrictions.
Yes. Exactly.
Never to be the chair again.
We're going to be changing the bylaw.
Right.
Chair term limits.
Actually, as you pointed out, there are no term limits.
That's correct.
To it, too, right?
Dictatorship.
So,
All right, so that is Foxtrot on to golf, which many of us are familiar with. Other general business. And I'll just mention, and this is just, I think, for next time, okay? I want us to talk about pocket parks. I looked in the master plan again, and the subject has come up multiple times about pocket parks. I'd like us to bring that to the attention of the commission, that we would advise at least we look at that issue again of selling, or I guess that would be the best word for it.
Disposing is actually
Disposing.
the legal term that we would use, which means we sell them.
A pocket parks and parks. It's after 9. We're not usually here this late under my tenure as the chair. This may be the time to do that with the economy such as it is, and the opportunities such as they are. And I know that we've tried that before, and I'm not familiar with the reasons why we failed at that, or the attempts failed at selling the pocket parks. But disposing. Thank you. But I think we ought to add that to the agenda next time. Okay.
can I just ask a quick question? Hypothetically, you dispose of these parks. What happens with the location?
Well, the first thing is, again, it has to be by a vote of the citizens of Oregon City to allow the city to do that. So that would have to be the first major step, and then you go through a process of disposition of the property, which is, there's a bunch of legal ways that has to happen, but you basically have to.
Is there an acquisition that can take place by the neighboring properties or something?
Yeah, those types of things can happen, and there's like
technically you're vacating an area, right?
Yeah, but the city would, in most cases, most of these pocket parks, and we haven't identified the exact ones that we're talking about, but I think generally we kind of know which ones. I think most of those have value to somebody. So in my opinion, the potential would be there definitely to receive some revenue back for selling those. But there's some legal ways that a public entity has to go about disposing of its property and selling that, and people having the opportunity to purchase that or bid on it or whatever the process would be. But my recommendation would be, and I think it would have, there probably is some legal connection to that, those funds would then go back to,
right,
like our Parks Development Fund, so that it could be used for, either acquiring or developing existing parks or whatever. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, and that would be part of the benefit that would be made known, and not that it wasn't last time, but I think we ought to start that process again.
It's been quite a few years at this point, so that I think definitely you might have some different looks at that now. So.
Okay, and one thing I did not mention when we talked about the PrAC vacancies is that there has been an email fashioned for the underrepresented. Actually, now we have it. Well, the mayor needs to appoint, but Tower Vista representative. But the other underrepresented, which is still about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 underrepresented neighborhoods associations. This will go out to them, and then perhaps we can fill the last vacancy that will come up at the end of this year with maybe somebody from the Kanema district, or let's see, what's another one here? Park Place or Rivercrest or South End and others. So And then finally, I'm not in the habit of writing myself out of any positions or jobs or responsibilities, but it is the end of 1 year of a 1 year term of me sitting in this particular chair, and I wouldn't presume any more than that. So I don't know. I guess I have to say I wouldn't be opposed, but I think the practice of this committee though is that we roll that over every January. So why don't we put that on the list for January too, as a vote for a new chair and vice chair.
Sounds good.
Okay. That's all I got for other general business. Well, I hope that was an appropriate place to stick that stuff. PrAC member, any comments on any of that? Okay, PrAC member reports. We'll start with Lynn.
I'll try and read this really fast, but it is so late. And thank goodness Denny sent out a lot of reports from Kathy from the Pioneer Center. But just they're feeling very good about the use of the center. 180 people were served a Thanksgiving meal while I was on Wheels and Conservation.
180.
Santa's coming to the center on the 22nd of
Cool.
December with small token gifts. Wreath sales made about $1,000, sold about 150, same as last year. They're monitoring the food budget very carefully because we're at a maximum already, and yet we know that food shortages will become more critical during the winter months. Transportation is full. We turn down several people every week who need transportation. In turning them down, we are able to suggest some other volunteer transportation services. And the Phyllis Stocking Project, I'll get to work personally with a group of about 8 of us. We helped put together, there'll be 180 of them going out this year. It's up about 15 from last year. 70 holiday food boxes and toys. And Beth processed 82 applications for the federally mandated low energy assistance program, and those have been turned over to the county for the process. And then the other thing is just more sort of to put it on radar, and it looks like it's probably 5 years out, but Kathy said that they've been approached by a group that's working to on a grant that would tear down the old Clackamas Heights and develop a mixed low-income housing project. It's, like I say, about a 5-year out. The reason that they came to the senior center is, of course, to get a sense of how many of our folks are receiving Meals on Wheels who currently live in the area. Because I've been substitute driver for the Park-based Holcomb-Redland route, it's probably a third of the route. There are quite a few people who live in there who aren't able to shop for and prepare their own meals.
Where exactly is that, Clackamas Heights?
That's the one on Holcomb Boulevard before you get to the grade school.
Okay, on the left.
Yeah, on the left. And if this development were to play out, then it will significantly increase the number of people receiving the Meals on Wheels. That kind of help. So that's it.
Great. Okay, Lynn, thank you very much. Okay, and Steve, your last meeting.
Yep, this is it. I just wanted to say I had a great time being on this committee. This was really fun, and who's to say I won't be back again?
That way.
But no, I just felt the need. I get pretty gung ho, and so of course, especially when I got into my new position at work, it was. To me, I saw, oh, wow, look at all the time I have. And so, of course, I filled it all. And so now I'm to that point where it's like, why did I fill all that time? So, no, it's been great, and I'll miss all you guys, but trust me, you may see me show up here for public opinion, and in another year, maybe I'll decide to come back again for another 3. So, we'll see. But you're not going to, hear the last of me for sure.
Not away.
Okay, we've got refreshments afterwards there, Steve. I think you knew that. So.
That's great. Thanks.
Nothing for me tonight.
Me neither. I've already spoke.
Yeah.
Patrick?
Me neither. I need to go home and take care of a toddler.
Just to say, Steve, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Steve. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on. Staff reports.
One quick thing I've got, and then I'll give Denise and Larry an opportunity to give you any quick updates they've got as well. We've had an issue come up with the Ermatinger house that I wanted to make you aware of. Excuse me. Regarding kind of the structure itself and some challenges in the very recent few weeks here, we had noticed some that the floor or the ceiling between the first and second floors, it's the ceiling of the first floor or the floor of the second floor, has been significantly slipping. Like, you know, if it slides that much, that's significant when you consider a structure. And it's almost a 170-year-old house. So anyway, that triggered some having us look into some further analysis and investigation. We had our own building department come out, and then that kind of led to the recommendation of having a structural engineer come out and do some analysis. This has all taken place just very recently. And that analysis led us to the point where we had to make a couple of quick decisions based on kind of first public safety and secondly the integrity of the building. And that was that we had to make an immediate decision to close the facility to the public for the until further notice, basically, until we resolve the issues. And we have our volunteer curators there, and they do some special events, and there were some holiday events coming up that we had to postpone or cancel, basically, but it really had to do with the safety. And then secondly, for the structural integrity, we had to do some emergency shoring to basically stabilize the structure, because what we found out was there were a number of issues going on there that were concerning enough that the recommendation was to immediately shore up the facility. We brought in a company that basically kind of stabilizes the building. We've got some issues with framing and foundation, and just some stuff with the building that just led us to know that it's definitely got some challenges. So anyway, we've done those two things, and then now that that's been temporarily stabilized and shored up, gives us the opportunity to step back and do some even further analysis. Denise has been spending a considerable amount of time over at that house. Another one of those duties and hats that she wears.
Hard hat in this case, I'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Very good.
Very good.
So now that the building has been shored up a little bit more, and it really we'll be back in there with our structural engineer looking at it even further and determining kind of more of what the longer term approach is going to be. But it seems likely that whatever the recommendations that come out are and the solutions are going to be probably A, costly, and B, time consuming. So I'll keep you posted as we move along. I'll be bringing forth whatever the recommendations are. And, I told our city commission at their meeting last night, I gave them a similar report to what I'm telling you right now, that because it's probably going to be something that we may be looking at some considerable resources to make the necessary repairs, that it's going to be a decision that's going to have to be made by the city commission. And so you're talking about resources and budgets and stuff earlier, and here's another facility issue right on our lap. So anyway, nothing more to do about that or anything at the moment. Just for your awareness that that's going on, and I'll definitely keep you posted. And then before I give Denise and Larry an opportunity to give you any other updates, I also just want to thank Steve for his service, and really appreciated having you on the committee. You've been a really bright spot and a real energetic person for this, and even though you've been busy and have a lot of things you do, you've always brought a lot of positive energy to this group, and that's very much appreciated. So,
you're welcome. Yeah.
So the least I can do is offer you a piece of cake as soon as we're done with this meeting.
Usually a cookie guy, but I'll have some cake.
Denise, Larry, do you have anything else to? I know we gave you, Denise did our written reports, which I think we used to do those and kind of slid off of doing those, and I think we're going to try to continue to bring those back to you again, so you can just have an idea of, on your own time, you can just spin through those and kind of get a flavor for what kind of things are going on and how many people are visiting what facilities and all that kind of stuff.
I think they're always really interesting, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
I do. I enjoyed them, and I did miss them there for a while because we did used to get them every meeting. And
Since it's your last meeting, we thought we'd do it for you, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like old times.
I do. I like those. Because
I don't remember,
ask me, how much does that place really get used, or what? They always. I hear stuff like that, so it's nice to have a general idea.
I thought it was nice to get them electronically. I don't know if you've done that in the past. I don't recall seeing them
We
before.
always have all members with email before.
Mhm.
With everybody on email. We can
Oh, yeah.
produce the PDFs. Now with our new suite, Office suite, we can produce the PDFs that shoot them out rather quickly. Otherwise, we tend to bog the system down with
Yeah.
that many documents. So
that's cool.
That was
it's
good
so
to
much
get those.
Technology has added to our ability to do this. So
That was good to be able to look them over.
Yep.
So you did look them over. Really want to highlight a couple of things. The home delivered meals under the Pioneer Center, from September to October, and we'll see a little bit more increase in the next couple months yet. Past history to current today. We were up 336 home delivered meals in 1 month's time. So that's significant. It's typically our trend to see more home delivered meals increase during the winter months versus our spring and summer. But we'll see those typically drop off just a little bit. But even through the cycle of the economy, we had started seeing some increases earlier than we typically do. So just, keep an eye on those as those reports come out. The other one to take a look at, which is significant, from September, August-ish to October tallies, our pool visits were up 5,000. And that's produced mostly because of our school lessons. All our lessons are in session. Everybody's out of vacation and back into the school session it runs. But, we run 10,400 people through our building. So just number crunching, just want to kind of let you guys know and reiterate, our staff works really, really hard. And they really do touch a lot of people's lives through the course of just daily interaction. So I just want to compliment, our staff, because they really do, just number-wise, deal with a lot of people on an everyday basis. And Rochelle and her staff did the swamp swim. We've done it before. Not always been very successful. They revamped the program. We had people lined up around the block.
Wow.
And we were full. So it's a conundrum. We were full, awesome, but we obviously weren't ready for the capacity of how full we would be. So we're going to do some little edits and some little revamping. Hopefully still have that same response, but be able to facilitate capacity.
What is a swamp swim?
Swamp swim is, they come in their costumes. If they come in their costumes, they get in for free. This year we had the dry side, which they did games and activities in the community room, and then had the ability to go over and do the swim side. And so they had costume contests and some other things, but we just had enormous numbers of people. Our pool capacity is 180 in the pool. We were at capacity in the pool. And then our community room was jam-packed, and we were cycling people through the community room. Because we couldn't, if people weren't leaving the pool, we couldn't filter anybody back to the pool. But we could filter people through the community room. So they did well over 350 people cycling in the community room. So I don't know what our total number capacity ended up being, because we just couldn't keep track of everybody. But we had 180 in the pool, and we were cycling through 350 in the community room. So another, highly successful event for us. And so kudos to our staff. They weren't quite a little awestruck, but they did a great job of, talking to our patrons and getting them through the frustration of we were full. We also have daddy-daughter dance coming up. It's one of those programs that we fill very, very fast. If you're interested and you want to register, you got to register early. And we do fill. So it's on the very back of the trail news if you guys are interested in looking at that. Sportcraft, we did receive our final grant funding agreement for it's roughly 166 plus change, $1,000. And that is going towards our boat ramp replacement. We will start that this summer. July 1st, I believe, is our first day in water, and it has to be done by October 31st. And so our bid documents, our construction documents are being finished right now. We should have them to review towards the middle of this month, and then we'll be going out to bid. So we're hoping to target January to take that out to bid. And Scott talked to you about Ermitanger.
Thanks, Denise. Thank you very much. And I'll put a plug in for the staff there at the pool. I'm there all the time, and just one of the things that I'm amazed about is when some of us worry that when we go into a public place and we take our shoes off that we're going to pick up some sort of fungus or something. They maintain that. I mean, they go through, and they've done this, I know, for years and years and years, but they still do it. I mean, they're spraying down and washing the locker rooms every single day. And I'm impressed by that. We keep that facility clean, sparkling, and, it's older in places and noticeably older in places, but, you do a good job of taking care of it. So, kudos. And the staff is good. They're really good. Exceptional.
Thank you.
So,
That's it on the staff reports.
okay, staff reports are over. Next scheduled meeting date is the 27th. And I don't know. I may have a high school. I'm also the high school swimming coach for Oregon City, and our meets are on Thursdays, and that looks like it's ringing a bell. January 27th. So I'll keep you guys informed on that. But I think we can keep that date for now. Yep. If it's not a home meet. If it were a home meet, I'd know that I would be here. But it might be an away meet. Okay. Any other comments on that date? Anybody have a problem with January 27th? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And it's time to adjourn at, that clock says 9:37, or 9:35. My clock says 9:37, so let's just call it 9:35. Adjourn the meeting.